Good evening. First tonight, unaffordable and not fit for purpose. That's how workers in Ambleside have described public transport in the area.
Many commute into the Lake District and told ITV Border they're forced to drive or car share because the bus is too expensive.
The main local company, Stagecoach, says it hasn't raised fares for 3 years, but now has to because of rising operating costs.
Early this week, Cumbria missed out on levelling up funding for public transport, with the UK government suggesting the bid lacked ambition. Fiona Marley Paterson has this special report.
Single mum living in a town millions holiday to, that she can't get out of.
It's been roughly 5-6 years since I've actually left Ambleside myself, only because I can't afford public transport. I can walk to Grasmere, but again it's far too expensive to leave Ambleside, so me and my son stay here.
Outside, Eleanor clutches her pass of freedom.
Have it here?
The bus is free if you're over 60.
It's very important to me because I no longer am able to run a car, and so without the bus and my Trusted Now card, I really don't know how I'd manage to get to important appointments, especially medical ones.
Much of the Lakes has few buses, but Ambleside is fairly well served. And yet, every worker I spoke to told me the bus isn't an option.
It's more than an hour's pay for me. For me, that's just not financially viable. So I was driving, and then obviously petrol prices have gone up exponentially in the past few weeks. So I started cycling in as much as I can, but obviously the weather in the Lake District is not always kind, and getting in and there's no shower facilities or anything at work. On some days it's fine, other days not so fine, so I end up having to drive. And we try and car share as much as we can, but we all work different shift patterns and there's not always someone else coming from that side. So
before I moved here, I never had a car because I never needed one. But I came here and realised my quality of life was going to be much diminished if I didn't, because the buses are, you can get a bus east, west out into Langdale and north south between Kendal and Keswick, and that's pretty much it, and really expensive.
Many of my friends, including my fiancé, are not in a position where they can drive. And for him to find a job, he had a job in Hawkshead. In winter, he could not get a bus early enough to start work at 9 o'clock. There just wasn't one, and it's just too much. I have a friend in Windermere who, I said, why don't you come through for the afternoon and we'll do something? And she's like, oh, I can't get a lift and the bus is, £5 single to Ambleside. It's just not affordable.
Most Lake District businesses are struggling for staff. Being able to attract them from places like Kendal is vital. A return there is £12, $30 for the week. The main provider, Stagecoach, says we've been very sensitive to the cost of living. No fare increases for 3 years. But it says its operating costs are up 12% with rising fuel prices. So fares went up in March. The government spending £7 billion levelling up transport outside of London. Some fares 45% cheaper, with many inner city routes costing just £2.50. But Cumbria's not getting any of the money. A bid was submitted with plans for cheaper season tickets for low-paid workers, but it was turned down. Manchester's buses will be levelled up, but not the Lake District's.
That's gutting, because that would have meant I could have taken my son out for things like Brockhall or days out to Windermere or Kendal. That would have been so helpful for single parents. Would have been great.
it's a bit of a kick in the teeth because there's a lot of hospitality jobs. Obviously the tourism industry is massive in the lakes, and it affects probably the vast majority of the people who are living here to work.
I just think levelling up is a slogan. I don't think it means anything. I think if they really cared, they just make buses free, period. I mean, that would be revolutionary. Make them buses free, suddenly find out what the real demand is, because people would suddenly use them. You know, pollution issues, parking issues, you could solve a lot of that.
You know, a friend in Manchester, it's £1.50 for, you know, magic bus anywhere she wants to go in the Manchester area. And, you know, a 15-minute bus ride here can be at least £5. How is that fair?
But if there isn't government support, what there could be is some kind of eco-levy on traffic coming into the lakes. And then the money could be ring-fenced to subsidise good public transport. And that would work. I think people would change their habits. People would take public transport. They might even enjoy it.
And even tourists say the bus isn't an option.
I wouldn't even conceive how I could catch a bus from where I've just come from to here. So if it looked behind you, the car parks are full, which means that people are thinking that that's the only practical option.
It's just more convenient to jump in the car. And then when you get here, the car park's full. But it's, we should have got the bus. We've done it before and it's fine, but it's not necessarily there when you want to use it.
Got to then plan your day a bit more rather than flexibility.
And then of course the other thing is you've then got the cost. What's the bus going to cost? There's 5 of us plus the dogs.
The cost of living crisis. For some, even the bus seems the preserve of the rich. Fiona Marley Paterson, ITV News, Ambleside.